The campus of the University of Utah in Salt Lake City is designed to feel like a sanctuary. It sits against the backdrop of the Wasatch Range, a sprawling landscape of red brick buildings and manicured lawns where over 30,000 students live and study. In October of 2018, the autumn air was turning crisp and the semester was in full swing. For the students living in the residence halls, the greatest sources of anxiety were supposed to be midterms, athletic performance, or social dynamics. There is an expectation of safety in these spaces, a belief that the institution acts as a barrier against the chaotic violence of the outside world. But that barrier is often an illusion, maintained only by the assumption that dangerous predators cannot walk through the front door. Lauren McCluskey was the kind of student who embodied the discipline required to succeed in such an environment. She was 21 years old, a senior majoring in communication, and a highly dedicated track and field athlete. She was a high jumper. To compete at a Division I level requires a specific mindset, rigid scheduling, physical resilience, and a focus on the future. Lauren was known for being responsible. She was close with her parents, Jill and Matt, speaking to them almost every single day. She was not a risk taker. She was not someone who sought out trouble. She was simply a young woman navigating the transition into adulthood, looking for the connections that define the college experience. In September of 2018, Lauren was at a local bar frequented by students. It was a standard social setting, loud and crowded. There, she met a man who introduced himself as Melvin. He was charming, attentive, and seemed to carry himself with a bit more maturity than the average undergraduate. He told her he was 28 years old. He said he was a student as well, or at least preparing to return to school. He seemed stable. He was physically imposing, tall and strong, which perhaps offered a sense of security. They exchanged numbers. For the first few weeks, the relationship appeared entirely normal. They spent time together in the way new couples do. He came to her dorm. They went to dinner. Lauren brought him around her friends. To the outside observer, there was nothing immediately alarming. He was polite. He seemed invested in her. But looking back, those who were close to Lauren began to notice small discrepancies, the kind of tiny friction points that are easy to dismiss when you want to believe the best in someone. The first warning sign was a lack of transparency. Melvin claimed to have a car, but he often didn't drive it or offered vague excuses about why he needed a ride. He claimed to have a place to live, but he spent an unusual amount of time at Lauren's dormitory. There was a vagueness to his background, a history that didn't quite line up when pressed for details. He told her he had been in the military, explaining away gaps in his timeline. But the behavior began to shift from vague to controlling. He became possessive. He wanted to know where she was. He wanted to occupy her time. This is a common trajectory in abusive dynamics. The love-bombing phase, where the partner is overwhelmed with affection, quickly transitions into isolation. Lauren, however, was sharp. She began to feel that something was wrong. Her friends, too, were suspicious. They felt he was older than 28. They felt he was hiding something. One of Lauren's friends decided to do what the campus security systems had failed to do. She ran a background check. The results were not just disappointing, they were terrifying. The man Lauren was dating was not 28. He was 37 years old. His name was indeed Melvin Rowland, but almost everything else he had told her was a fabrication. He was not a student. He was a convicted sex offender. He had spent more than a decade in prison for attempting to lure a minor and soliciting a minor. He was currently on parole. He was a man with a violent, predatory history who had lied his way into the life of a college student. On October 9th, 2018, Lauren confronted him. She did exactly what you were supposed to do. She didn't bargain. She didn't try to fix him. She ended the relationship immediately. She told him it was over and that she wanted him to leave her alone. In a rational world, this would be the end of the story. A bad experience, a close call, and a lesson learned. But for a man like Melvin Rowland, rejection is not an end. It is a trigger for escalation. The shift in Rowland's behavior was instantaneous. The charm evaporated, replaced by the cold, transactional nature of a career criminal. He began to message her incessantly, but he didn't just beg for her to come back. He moved directly to extortion. During their short relationship, they had taken photos together, some of which were intimate. Rowland messaged Lauren and told her that unless she paid him $1,000, He would release the compromised photos to the public and send them to her friends and family. This is a specific type of psychological terror. For a 21-year-old student, the threat of public humiliation is paralyzed. Lauren was terrified. She didn't want her parents to know. She didn't want her reputation as an athlete destroyed. Under extreme duress, she sent the money. She paid him the $1,000 in hopes that he would disappear. He did not disappear. On October 12th, Lauren gathered her courage and went to the University of Utah campus police. This is the critical juncture where the narrative shifts from a relationship drama to an institutional tragedy. Lauren walked into the station and laid out the facts. She told them she had been blackmailed. She told them she had paid the money. She told them about the photos. Most importantly, she told them who he was. She gave him his name. She told him he was a sex offender. The police opened a case. They assigned a detective. But the urgency that Lauren felt, the visceral fear of a man who had already lied to her and extorted her, was not mirrored by the authorities. To the campus police, this was classified as a sex offense and extortion case, but the immediate physical danger was underestimated. In the days that followed, Lauren did everything right. She blocked his number. She changed her routine, but Roland was persistent. He began using text spoofing apps to contact her from different numbers. He sent messages pretending to be the deputy chief of police, trying to lure her out of her dorm. He was testing the perimeter, probing for a way to get to her. Lauren reported these messages to the police. She told them he was still contacting her. She told them about the fake police texts. Here is the most harrowing detail of the investigation. The campus police officers handling Lauren's case did not know how to check Melvin Rowland's parole status. They had his name. They knew he had a record, but they did not contact the Department of Corrections immediately. If they had, they would have learned that Rowland was a fugitive. He had violated his parole simply by changing his address without reporting it, and certainly by owning a weapon, which he had recently acquired. A simple phone call to his parole officer could have resulted in an immediate warrant for his arrest. He could have been picked up within hours. Instead, the investigation moved at a bureaucratic crawl. The detective assigned to the case took days off. There was a lack of handover. The information sat in files while Rowland walked free. Lauren was living in a state of siege, constantly looking over her shoulder, while the people sworn to protect her were filing paperwork. By October 19th, a full week after Lauren first went to the police, nothing had been done to apprehend Rowland. He was still free. He was still watching. On the morning of Monday, October 22nd, the situation had reached a quiet, terrifying boiling point. The police had finally formally assigned a detective to look into the extortion, but they had not yet moved to arrest him. Lauren spent the day attending classes. She tried to maintain her routine. She went to her evening lecture. Around 8:20 p.m., Lauren left her class. She was walking back to her residence hall. It was dark. The campus was illuminated by streetlights, shadows stretching across the pavement. As she walked, she did what she always did. She called her mother. They were talking about mundane things. Lauren was updating her mom on a paper she was writing. Her voice was calm. She was near her dorm, in a parking lot that she had walked through 100 times. Suddenly, her mother, Jill, heard Lauren's voice change. It wasn't a scream, but a sudden, sharp exclamation. "No, no, no." Then there was the sound of the phone hitting the ground. Jill McCluskey, thousands of miles away in Washington state, shouted into the phone, "Lauren? Lauren?" She heard the sound of the phone being picked up. She heard rustling. She thought for a fleeting moment that Lauren had just dropped the device and was picking it up. But then she heard the breathing. It was heavy. It wasn't Lauren. Jill asked, "Hello? Lauren?" There was no answer. The line went dead. Jill immediately called Lauren's father, Matt. Panic set in instantly. They called the University of Utah campus police. They told the dispatcher that they had been on the phone with their daughter and that something had happened. They told them she was in the parking lot near the towers. At that exact moment in the parking lot, the worst-case scenario had become reality. Melvin Rowland had been waiting. He had been stalking the campus, knowing her schedule. He confronted her in the darkness. He had a gun. He forced Lauren into the back seat of a car. This was not a negotiation. It was an abduction. He dragged her across the asphalt. The terror of those few minutes is difficult to articulate. Lauren, an athlete, a strong young woman, was overpowered by a man who had no business being on the streets. He didn't take her to a second location. He didn't drive away. The violence happened right there in the heart of the campus. In the back seat of the vehicle, Roland shot Lauren multiple times. He then exited the car and fled into the night. The police response was chaotic. Officers swarmed the area. They found Lauren's belongings scattered on the ground. Shortly after, they found her body in the parked car. She had been killed instantly. The campus went into lockdown. Alerts were sent out to students to shelter in place. A manhunt began. The description of Melvin Rowland was circulated. The police knew exactly who they were looking for now, but it was too late. The system that was too slow to arrest him for extortion was now racing to catch him for murder. For hours, the city of Salt Lake was on edge. Helicopters circled overhead. Police dogs were deployed. Rowland had been picked up by an acquaintance who didn't know what he had done and dropped off near downtown Salt Lake City. He made his way to the Trinity AME Church, a historic building in the city. He broke in. As the police perimeter closed in around the neighborhood, Rowland realized there was no escape. He had committed the ultimate act of violence, and his facade was gone. In the early hours of the morning, inside the church, Melvin Rowland shot and killed himself. When the sun rose on October 23rd, the University of Utah was a different place. The illusion of safety had been shattered, but as the grief settled in, it was quickly replaced by rage. The investigation into the timeline revealed a catastrophic failure of law enforcement. It came to light that the officer assigned to Lauren's case had not just been slow, he had been negligent. He admitted to not knowing how to look up criminal history or parole status. The police department had treated Lauren's case as a low-priority interpersonal dispute rather than a high-risk stalking case involving a violent felon. Reports showed that during the week Lauren was begging for help, Rowland had been living his life openly. He hadn't gone into hiding until after the murder. He could have been found. The university initially claimed they did everything they could. They cited privacy laws and jurisdictional issues, but an independent review commissioned later showed that the campus police were undertrained, overworked, and completely unprepared to handle domestic violence and stalking. They had missed multiple opportunities to intervene. They had ignored the red flags that Lauren herself had pointed out to them. Lauren's parents, Jill and Matt McCluskey, refused to let their daughter's death be just another statistic. They sued the university, not for money, but to force change. They argued that the institution had violated Title IX laws by failing to respond to reports of sexual harassment and violence. The university eventually admitted that the murder was preventable. They settled with the family for $13.5 million, all of which the McCluskeys pledged to the Lauren McCluskey Foundation to support campus safety and animal welfare, two causes Lauren loved. But the money and the policy changes do not erase the lingering unease of this case. The horror of Lauren McCluskey's story isn't just about a man with a fake ID and a gun. It isn't just about the monster in the dark. The true horror lies in the silence of the machinery that was supposed to help her. It lies in the image of a young woman sitting in a police station, handing over the name of her stalker, handing over proof of his crimes, and being told to wait. It lies in the realization that she did everything society tells women to do to stay safe. She was careful, she reported it, she sought authority, and she was still left alone in that parking lot. When you walk through a university campus now, past the blue emergency lights and the security patrols, you have to wonder, if the predator is charming enough and the system is slow enough, does any of it actually matter? Lauren McCluskey's death proved that the most dangerous thing isn't always the man following you. Sometimes it's the indifference of the people you call for help.